Today we set out on a captivating journey through the history of ancient Israel. From the arrival of the Hebrews in Canaan to the dramatic Babylonian exile. Later periods? Our main guide is the Old Testament, or Tanakh. Even if you're not religious, its iconic tales, Moses leading the Exodus, the law at Mount Sinai, David's clash with Goliath, Solomon's wisdom, and his fabled meeting with the Queen of Sheba, are instantly recognizable. For centuries, these stories were accepted as unquestioned history, but everything shifted in the 19th century when archaeology burst onto the scene. Digs across the Middle East launched the field of biblical archaeology, an attempt to uncover physical proof behind these legendary tales. While some parts of the Old Testament have been backed by discoveries, others remain unconfirmed or even directly contradicted by the evidence. In this video, we'll explore the world of ancient Israel by combining archaeology and extra-biblical sources with the Tanakh, not just as sacred text, but as a historical window into the Jewish past. The first recorded mention of the Israelites comes from the reign of the Egyptian pharaoh Merneptah. On a stele celebrating his victories, he wrote, "Plundered is Canaan. Israel is laid waste, its seed is no more." This 1207 BC inscription aligns with the first archaeological signs of a people identified as Israelites settling in Canaan. They were a loose federation of nomadic tribes, united by language, beliefs, and culture. Where did they come from? Still a mystery. The Bible's story of an exodus from Egypt has no direct historical proof, and it actually clashes with much of the archaeological record. That said, Egypt did house a large Semitic population back then, mainly Amorites, nomadic herders whose name gave rise to Amuru, southern Syria, along with Canaanites. Some scholars believe part of this population migrated into Canaan in the late Bronze Age, mingling with locals and other Semitic nomads. That fusion, they suggest, may have inspired the Exodus story. It's plausible, but so far there's no hard evidence. Many researchers trace the roots of the Hebrews to the nomadic Habiru and Shasu tribes who roamed east of Canaan and Egypt. These groups, mostly pastoralists, also conducted raids on agricultural settlements across the Fertile Crescent. Over time, they likely helped shape what became the early Israelite identity. By the end of the Bronze Age, Israelites were rooted in Canaan. Initially herders, they gradually became settlers. While tents were still home, they began building stone enclosures for livestock. One trait made them stand out: they avoided pork. Excavations at their camps show a striking absence of pig bones, something not seen in neighboring cultures, where pig remains often account for 10 to 40% of refuse. The biblical account of Israel's conquest of Canaan also clashes with archaeology. Cities like Hazor, Jericho, and Lachish did burn, but not in one swift campaign like in Joshua. Instead, destruction came gradually over decades, in step with the wider Late Bronze Age collapse. Fires raged even in areas where Israelites weren't present. So, the ruins can't definitively be tied to them. During this chaotic time, the Israelites were a coalition of tribes linked by common customs and faith. The Old Testament lists 12 tribes, but whether that number is literal is unclear. Numbers like 3, 7, 12, and 40 were symbolically sacred in the ancient Near East. Still, 12 is as good a guess as any. Archaeologically, there's no way to tell the tribes apart, so we can't confirm or deny the tradition. Each tribe was led by a chief, or judge. That's why this period is known as the time of the judges. Despite the legal-sounding name, these judges were actually military leaders. Legislative and judicial power sat with the priests. Leadership wasn't passed down by bloodline, some were chosen by the people. And yes, even women could be judges, like Deborah, who appears in the Old Testament. This was also a time of constant conflict. The Israelites fought off Moabites, Ammonites, and others, but their most enduring enemy was the Philistines. This seafaring group arrived in southern Canaan around the same time, and their name eventually gave us Palestine. Their origins lie in the Aegean, confirmed by both DNA and artifacts resembling Mycenaean styles. Their exact identity, still debated. But they likely came from Crete, Cyprus, or mainland Greece. In Canaan, they built a powerful alliance of 5 cities: Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gath, Ekron, and Gaza. With them, they brought a valuable secret: ironworking. Early on, They monopolized iron tools and weapons, refusing to sell to Israelites. The Old Testament even notes that iron swords were rare, mostly reserved for kings like Saul and David as status symbols. But over time, this tech spread across the region, transforming warfare and society. The Judges era was defined by brutal warfare. The Philistines, with better weapons and tighter organization, gained the upper hand. The Israelite tribes, fractured and disunified, couldn't mount a strong resistance. The Philistines pushed deep into Canaan, tightening their hold on the region. In response, the tribes began to unite under a single king, ushering in the monarchy. The first was Saul of the tribe of Benjamin. He rallied Israel to resist the Philistines, but never truly centralized power. A war hero more than a statesman, he did score victories and briefly freed Israel. But at Mount Gilboa, his forces suffered a crushing defeat. Saul and his son Jonathan were killed, and the Philistines regained control, installing governors in Israelite cities. Saul's historical status is debated. Some compare him to mythic figures like Romulus or King Arthur. Yet parts of his story have historical echoes. For example, the Tanakh says the Philistines captured Saul's hometown, Gibeah, and that he later retook it and made it his capital. Excavations at Gibeah revealed a 12th century BC site, destroyed, rebuilt, and fortified, fitting Saul's time. It's not conclusive, but it hints that his story may be rooted in real events. After Saul's death, David rose to power and ushered in the united monarchy. He finished unifying the tribes and created a centralized state, first ruling from Hebron. He crushed the Philistines, freeing Israel, then conquered the Jebusites, seized Jerusalem, and made it his capital. His military campaigns extended Israel's reach, turning former enemies into vassals. Beyond war, David reformed the justice system, conducted a census, and introduced taxes, laying the foundation for a real state. David is the first Israelite king widely accepted as historical. Though once thought legendary, two external inscriptions, one from Moab and another from Aram, mention the House of David, confirming his dynasty. His existence is now considered fact. When David died, his son Solomon took over. His reign brought peace and prosperity. With Israel located on key trade routes, wealth flowed in from Mesopotamia, Syria, and Egypt. Solomon's crowning achievement? Building the first temple in Jerusalem, Judaism's future spiritual heart. Unlike David, Solomon's historicity is less certain. No ancient texts mention him by name. Still, large-scale building projects from his era support the biblical account. Most historians agree he likely existed, though the Bible may exaggerate his grandeur. It's crucial to understand that ancient Israel's religion during this era looked very different from later Judaism. It wasn't monotheistic. Israelites worshipped many gods. Scholars call it Yahwism, a belief system centered around Yahweh, the chief god, who had a consort, Asherah. Inscriptions from the time often say, "To Yahweh and his Asherah." In northern Israel, influenced by Phoenicia, the top deity wasn't even Yahweh. It was El. That's why some Bible passages use Elohim instead of Yahweh. Over time, these deities merged, with Yahweh becoming supreme. Still, Israelites worshipped other gods too, like Baal, Shamash, Chemosh, and Yarig. Archaeologists have found figurines, teraphim, used as protective charms, showing how polytheistic their faith truly was. No single temple existed either. Altars and shrines to various deities dotted the land. Even human sacrifice, including infants, was practiced, echoing Phoenician and Carthaginian rituals. The Bible itself hints at this, in stories like Isaac's binding and Jeremiah's writings. Later biblical authors, trying to push a monotheistic view, described prophets battling idolatry. But archaeology tells a different story. Polytheism was the norm, not the exception. After Solomon, the kingdom split in two around 931 BC. His son Rehoboam ruled Judah from Jerusalem, but harsh taxes angered the northern tribes. Led by Jeroboam, 10 tribes broke away to form a rival kingdom. Its capital shifted from Shechem to Tirzah to Samaria. Northern Israel thrived economically due to fertile lands and trade. But unlike Judah's stable Davidic line, it saw frequent coups, 19 kings from 9 dynasties in 200 years. Power changed hands often, sometimes violently. Important rulers included Omri, who built Samaria and stabilized the kingdom. His son Ahab married Jezebel and promoted worship of Baal and Asherah. Under Jeroboam II, Israel reached its peak in size and wealth, but also corruption and inequality. All of this unfolded as the Neo-Assyrian Empire rose in power. At first, Israel paid tribute to Assyria, but diplomacy failed when the empire turned to conquest. Tiglath-Pileser III seized Galilee and the Transjordan. His successor, Shalmaneser V, besieged Samaria after King Hoshea allied with Egypt. In 722 BC, the city fell. Sargon II deported much of Israel's population. These exiles became the lost tribes. The Bible paints northern kings as evil, but these accounts came from Judah's scribes. From their perspective, the northern kingdom was rebellious and idolatrous. Sadly, no northern records survive to tell the other side of the story. After Israel's fall, waves of refugees poured into Judah. Cities like Jerusalem exploded in population. At this pivotal time, King Hezekiah led Judah. He expanded Jerusalem, built new defenses and water systems, and launched religious reforms to centralize worship and unite his people. He banned idols, destroyed rural shrines, and invited northerners to a rescheduled Passover in Jerusalem. But disaster nearly struck when Assyrian king Sennacherib invaded. Many cities fell, and Jerusalem survived only after Hezekiah paid a massive ransom. His son Manasseh reversed the reforms, reintroducing idols and pagan altars in the temple itself. It wasn't until Josiah, Hezekiah's great-great-grandson, that the reforms were restored. Josiah not only destroyed rival temples, but desecrated them by turning them into latrines. During Josiah's reign, the Book of Deuteronomy appeared. Though tradition says it was found in the temple, modern scholars believe it was written then, and it was likely the first book of the Torah. The rest came later, also under Josiah. This view challenges the biblical claim that Moses received the Torah on Sinai. Instead, we now see these texts as shaped by their political and historical context, not divine lightning bolts. The kings who followed, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, and Jehoiakim, faced powerful neighbors, Assyria, Egypt, and Babylon. They juggled alliances to survive. Zedekiah, a Babylonian vassal, gambled on Egypt's help to revolt. It failed. In retaliation, Babylon's king Nebuchadnezzar II launched a crushing campaign. Jerusalem was besieged, then devastated. The first temple was destroyed. Tens of thousands were exiled to Babylon. This marked the Babylonian captivity, a turning point that would forever reshape Jewish faith and identity. The fall of Jerusalem and the Babylonian exile didn't mark the end of the Israelite story, but the beginning of a profound transformation. In exile, the people of Judah would confront questions of identity, faith, and survival that would shape the foundations of Judaism as we know it today. The temple was gone, the kingdom shattered, but their story was far from over. What emerged from this crucible of loss and reflection was something enduring. A renewed sense of purpose, a deepened religious tradition, and a legacy that would influence civilizations for millennia to come. If you found this journey through ancient Israel's history as fascinating as we did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth explorations of ancient civilizations, legendary leaders, and untold stories that shaped our world. History is never just in the past. It's the key to understanding our present. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next chapter of the Timewalker Historian.